meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday. Has your thinking changed at all as it relates to these negotiations with Iran or the timeline with Iran?
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it shouldn't take, I mean, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly, yeah.
The atmosphere surrounding the White House meeting between President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was charged with urgency, even before either leader stepped in front of cameras. Iran's nuclear ambitions, its regional influence, and the broader balance of power in the Middle East formed the core of the discussions, placing this meeting among the most consequential diplomatic engagements of the moment. At a time when tensions remain high and global attention is fixed on the region, the two leaders met to align strategies, clarify priorities, and signal resolve. Central to the talks was the ongoing effort to address Iran's nuclear program through negotiation. President Trump has made clear that diplomacy remains his preferred approach, but the path forward is far from settled. After the meeting, he acknowledged that while discussions were productive, nothing definitive had been agreed upon regarding a new or revised deal with Tehran. That statement reflects both the complexity of the negotiations and the reality that multiple sticking points remain unresolved. The absence of a clear breakthrough does not necessarily indicate failure, but it does underscore the challenges of bridging long-standing differences. The nuclear question remains the focal point of U.S. engagement with Iran. Washington's objective, as outlined by the president, is to determine whether Tehran is willing to accept meaningful and verifiable limits on its nuclear activities. These limits would aim to prevent the development of nuclear weapons capability while potentially offering Iran economic relief or sanctions adjustments in return. The administration appears intent on testing whether diplomacy can deliver concrete results before considering more forceful measures. Trump reiterated that negotiations must continue to see if a viable agreement can be reached, emphasizing that dialogue remains open but not unlimited. For Israel, however, the nuclear file is only part of a larger concern. Prime Minister Netanyahu has consistently argued that Iran's ballistic missile program and its support for armed proxy groups across the region pose equally serious threats. During the White House meeting, he reportedly encouraged the U.S. to broaden the diplomatic agenda beyond uranium enrichment and inspection protocols. From Israel's perspective, an agreement that addresses only nuclear development while ignoring missile technology and regional militancy would leave critical vulnerabilities intact. Iran's backing of groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah has long been a central security issue for Israel. These organizations have engaged in repeated conflicts with Israel, and their military capabilities are often linked to Iranian support. Netanyahu's position suggests that any lasting solution must address these dynamics alongside nuclear concerns. While the U.S. has not publicly committed to expanding the scope of negotiations in the way Israel prefers, the discussion itself highlights ongoing coordination between the two allies. The meeting also reflected a dual strategy that has characterized U.S. policy in recent months, combining diplomacy with visible military readiness. President Trump has emphasized that while he prefers a negotiated solution, the United States will not hesitate to consider other options if talks fail. This approach is designed to maintain leverage at the negotiating table while reassuring allies that Washington remains committed to regional security. A significant component of this posture involves the potential deployment of additional naval assets to the Middle East. The Pentagon is reportedly preparing a second aircraft carrier strike group for possible deployment, a move that would substantially increase American military presence in the region. The USS Abraham Lincoln is already operating in nearby waters, and reports suggest that the USS George H.W. Bush could be mobilized within weeks if ordered. Carrier strike groups are among the most powerful tools of U.S. force projection, capable of launching air operations, supporting maritime security, and responding rapidly to crises. Defense officials have been careful to clarify that while preparations are underway, no formal order has yet been issued by the president to deploy the second carrier. Military planning often involves readiness measures that provide flexibility without committing to immediate action. This distinction allows the administration to calibrate its response depending on how diplomatic talks evolve. Should negotiations show signs of progress, the heightened military posture could remain a deterrent without escalating into confrontation. If talks collapse, the United States would already be positioned to respond quickly. President Trump's public comments reinforce this balance. He has consistently framed diplomacy as his preference, stating that reaching an agreement with Iran would be the best outcome for all parties involved. At the same time, he has made clear that if a deal cannot be reached, alternative options remain available. This language signals determination without foreclosing negotiation. It also reflects an effort to reassure domestic and international audiences that the U.S. is neither rushing toward conflict nor retreating from its commitments. The close coordination between Washington and Jerusalem remains a defining feature of this moment. Despite some differences in emphasis regarding the scope of negotiations, both governments share the fundamental goal of preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Intelligence sharing, defense cooperation, and diplomatic communication between the two countries continue to be robust. The White House meeting served as a public affirmation of that partnership, demonstrating unity even as complex policy decisions are still being weighed. The broader regional context adds additional layers of complexity. The Middle East remains a patchwork of fragile alliances, unresolved conflicts, and shifting power dynamics. Gulf states are closely monitoring developments, aware that any U.S.-Iran agreement could reshape economic and security calculations. European allies, many of whom have supported diplomatic engagement with Tehran, are also watching for signals about the direction of U.S. policy. Meanwhile, regional actors aligned with Iran are assessing whether increased U.S. military presence signals deterrence or escalation. Against this backdrop, the White House meeting did not produce a dramatic announcement or a signed agreement. Instead, it clarified positions and reaffirmed commitments. Diplomacy is ongoing, military preparedness is visible, and coordination between the United States and Israel remains strong. The absence of a definitive agreement underscores that negotiations are still in progress, with key decisions yet to be made. In the coming weeks, much will depend on the pace and substance of talks with Tehran. The potential deployment of a second carrier strike group serves as both a signal and a safeguard. It communicates resolve while providing operational flexibility. At the same time, continued diplomatic engagement suggests that Washington is still testing whether a negotiated outcome is achievable. The meeting between Trump and Netanyahu ultimately highlighted the delicate balance that defines current policy, pursuing dialogue without appearing weak, demonstrating strength without triggering unnecessary escalation, and aligning closely with allies while navigating complex regional realities. As events continue to unfold, the world will be watching to see whether diplomacy prevails, deterrence reshapes calculations, or new developments shift the course of this high-stakes standoff.